Israel has spied on millions of Palestinians using Microsoft's technology. Now the high-tech giant says it's cancelled some of its services to the Israeli army. But as the military expands its devastating war on Gaza, is this move enough? And will it make any difference on the ground? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Neave Barker. US tech giant Microsoft says it's stopped the Israeli military from accessing its cloud computing and AI technology that was being used to spy on and bomb Palestinians. The move follows an investigation that found that Israeli forces had been using Microsoft's powerful Azure services for mass surveillance and attacks in Gaza and the occupied West Bank. But has Microsoft's decision come too late? And what can be done to stop Israel simply finding a replacement from another powerful software supplier? We'll get to our guests in a moment, but first, this report from Paul Ging.
The Israeli military's Unit 8200 was founded in 1952 and has carried out more than 7 decades of clandestine operations, intelligence gathering and spying on Palestinians. In August, it was revealed in a media investigation that Unit 8200 was using Microsoft's Azure cloud computing and AI technology to spy on Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and to bomb Gaza. This led to demonstrations by Microsoft employees at the company's facilities around the US. Some ended up occupying the office of Brad Smith, the company's president, at Microsoft's headquarters in Redmond, Washington. Smith at the time downplayed Microsoft's work with Unit 8200.
The vast majority of what Microsoft does for the Israeli military, the Israeli Defense Force, is protect the cybersecurity of the state of Israel. There are some other activities as well that involve the use of Azure for storage, for example, for processing of data. And that is what we are focused on.
But Microsoft's now prevented Unit 8200 from using a set of cloud and AI services after an internal review, following the protests, found what it called preliminary evidence backing up the media reports of surveillance systems in the occupied West Bank and Gaza. The investigation says the collaboration between Microsoft and Unit 8200 came after a meeting 4 years ago between Microsoft's CEO and the then head of Israel's military spy agency. That meeting led to an agreement to collaborate on moving large volumes of sensitive intelligence material into Microsoft's Azure platform. After this, the Israeli unit began storing the mobile phone communications of Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and Gaza at Microsoft cloud storage data centers in the Netherlands and Ireland. It also emerged that some of the Israeli Microsoft staff had themselves once served in Unit 8200.
The whole arrangement from the beginning, from 2021, was between the head of A200, a unit that is known for doing surveillance on Palestinian, and Microsoft and the very top officials of Microsoft.
But while Microsoft's Azure system can no longer be used by the Israeli military, Microsoft, after all, says it will continue to work closely with Israeli forces. While Israel has reportedly been exploring the possibility of using Amazon's cloud computing and AI services for its mass surveillance program instead. Amazon hasn't commented on that report. Paul Ging, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
OK, let's bring in our guests. In Washington, D.C., Rob Pegoraro, a technology journalist and analyst. In Amsterdam, the Palestinian journalist Taghreed El-Khodary. And in New York, Kenneth Roth, former executive director of Human Rights Watch and author of Righting Wrongs, My Life in Human Rights. A very warm welcome to all three of you. A pleasure that you could make it on Inside Story. According then to that joint investigation cited in the report, in 2021, Yossi Sariel, who is in charge of this shadowy Unit 8200, one of the branches of Israel's intelligence agency, met with the heads of Microsoft and was granted access to the use of Azure to store data. Unit 8200 has been described as being a bit like the NSA for the United States or GCHQ in the UK. Rob, can you explain to us what Azure is? Why are commercial cloud servers useful to Israel? And what do we understand Microsoft had agreed to?
So Azure is a cloud service platform similar to what you can get from Google, Oracle, lots of other large tech companies offer comparable services. Why would you want to use that? Because essentially building your own data center can get expensive. And if you want to do efficient analysis of a large amount of data, it might be more effective to outsource that to people who specialize in it. So that's not a big departure. The 8200 unit, which is not only the equivalent of the NSA, but so many people in the Israeli cybersecurity industry, a lot of them previously worked in the 8200 unit, that they would then use this to do this sort of dragnet bulk surveillance of an entire society. That is somewhat remarkable.
Dragnet surveillance, Kenneth, that's what Rob describes it as. I mean, part of Unit 8200's, let's call it job description, was intercepting and storing vast amounts of sensitive information. All, of course, in the service of an occupying force. Surely some alarm bells must have been ringing somewhere in Microsoft over what this tech was being used for. Or maybe those alarm bells were not ringing. What do you make of all of this?
Well, I think you're right that Microsoft showed an amazing lack of curiosity. It evidently didn't act to cut Israel's access to Azure off until in August, The Guardian and 972, an Israeli news outlet, revealed that 8200 was using Azure for mass surveillance. But this is not the first time that we found that the Israeli military is using AI and technology to track Palestinians and, frankly, to kill them in Gaza. There's something called Lavender, where AI is used to figure out, who is Hamas. And basically, Israel has been delegating to an algorithm the decision of life or death. There's something called Where's Daddy, which traces supposed Hamas fighters and often ends up killing them in their family homes along with their families. This has been out, since early in the war. So, why Microsoft had to wait for this news revelation to act when it was clear that Israel was using technology in a very controversial way to kill Palestinians in Gaza. It should have acted much, much earlier.
Taghreed, turning to you, how has Israel's use of data and some of the technology as described there by Kenneth been used on the ground? I mean, can you give us any examples or evidence of what that looks like in the occupied West Bank and in Gaza, the weaponization of technology, essentially?
Yeah, it's complete control by the Israeli occupation forces over people in the West Bank, in East Jerusalem, and also in Gaza. The complete control extends over all Palestinians. At this point. In the past, they used to focus on fighters, resistance leaders, segments of the population. But now every single Palestinian, they have information on, they gather information on. In the West Bank, the fear dominates even ordinary online activity. People worry about what they post or share online on social media. When visiting relatives in another city or village, people now are choosing not to bring their phones with them to avoid surveillance at Israeli checkpoints. Self-censorship has become the norm. Fear silences people. Many resort to coded language or move to apps like Signal, yet even these technologies are now viewed with deep distrust. In Gaza, Palestinians there, they used to fear on daily basis. Someone like me also, I used to fear at that time when I used to cover Gaza, ending as a collateral damage. Now, Palestinians in both West Bank and Gaza, they fear that being mistranslated, misunderstood by AI. You have the slang, the jargon, the nuance in the language that is different from a village to a city. And imagine, this is what they fear now. The aim, I would give the example of Khurshid family that I know. A mother, a grandmother decided to stay in Gaza City in her balcony, didn't fear at the beginning of the genocide that that Israel will harm her kids, because they were very successful business people, never been close to politics, always avoided politics. What Israel, what Israeli plan did, the strike, they killed her entire family, more than 40. She remained as a grandmother. And now, it is the intention. We not avoid that the intention.
You describe a situation that goes. You describe, Taghreed, a situation that goes well beyond surveillance. We're talking about profound levels of intimidation here as well, across an entire society of people. Rob, I mean, this isn't for Microsoft the storing of cat pictures in the cloud for personal use, is it? I mean, this is a nation state that's been accused of human rights violations in the past, long before October the 7th, 2023. I mean, we've got Israeli military personnel that were being investigated at the International Criminal Court for the 2014 Gaza war. We've got settlers in the occupied West Bank that are subject to multiple UN resolutions. I mean, are you surprised Microsoft agreed to this?
Yeah, I mean, reading about the extent of the surveillance, the unfortunate historical parallel that comes to mind. 3 weeks ago, I was in Berlin. I visited the Stasi Museum, which chronicles how intensively the East German regime spied on its own citizens. And the notion that Israel ordered up the system and somebody at Microsoft thought it was a good idea or didn't ask enough questions to surveil 1 million calls an hour, as The Guardian's August 6th story describes it, is pretty appalling. And it's worth noting that this was an operation before the atrocities of October 7th, 2023. So the entire point of this, you would think, to keep Israeli civilians safe, doesn't seem like it even worked at that.
Well, that's the question, isn't it? I mean, why, if this surveillance technology is so vital to Israel, how did it fail to prevent the attacks by Hamas on October the 7th? I mean, we know that Yossi Sariel, the head of Unit 8200, resigned in the wake of the October 7th attacks. I mean, Rob, staying with you, I mean, what does that say to you?
Well, I mean, it doesn't seem like the current Israeli government has been working too hard to see what went wrong. The Netanyahu has his own interests in keeping this war going, reducing Gaza to rubble. That, I don't get into military strategy, but I think a lot of Americans have begun wondering where exactly Israel is going with this. When does it ever end? And you're certainly seeing a split between the Republican Party and a lot of Democratic voters.
Rob, very, very quickly, I wonder if you can answer this in a couple of sentences. I mean, would this have been a good deal for Microsoft? Would it have been useful for Microsoft? Would they have gained anything from working alongside, let's say, cyber engineers from Israel? Presumably, it could have been financially lucrative. Is it possible to answer that briefly?
Probably more in the sense of technical experience. The 8200 unit people are very, very good at what they do. That's a reason why there's so many good cybersecurity companies in Israel. In terms of money, Microsoft is not hurting for it. So I don't know that this contract was going to help them make a quarterly number or not.
Taghreed, I mean, the initial focus we know of this technology was the West Bank before being deployed in Gaza. What sort of control does Israel exert over the entire Palestinian communications infrastructure? I understand Palestinians in Gaza in the past have been limited to 2G technology. It's 3G in the occupied West Bank, making it harder for people to make WhatsApp calls, for instance. I mean, how do Palestinians navigate these challenges? And as an outspoken Palestinian yourself, Do you fear being the subject of surveillance?
I mean, this has become, this is becoming part of life for Palestinians. They feel they are monitored. And, if you look at Gaza now, what Israel is doing now is destroying every high residential building, and why is that? Because they want to even weaken the internet. And why is that? Because the message that is coming from Gaza by the brave victims that are, of the genocide now in Gaza, they are able to, despite all these restrictions, they are able to transmit the images that have played a role to clarify to the people worldwide what's really happening, what Israel is committing on the ground. And that explains why Israel is demolishing these high-rise buildings to weaken more and more the internet. It's extremely important also to notice that, I always wonder how come, you have Erez checkpoint, the only exit for Palestinians to Israel. And then nobody among all the international journalists, international mainstream media have ever wondered what's underground that Erez checkpoint. It is a spy headquarters by Israel in which they gather, and that's not new. It's been the case for a long, long time, even before Oslo. And nobody has ever wondered what's underground that checkpoint. The idea that they focus all the time that Israel, Hamas and the tunnels and how they manage, to build things underground. But Israel, they learned that from Israel. What's happening at Erez checkpoint, underground of that checkpoint, is a spy headquarters that's been there for ages. And now above that, they have artificial intelligence. And it's extremely, extremely very sad that these giant corporations are, playing a role and going, and being complicit with the genocide.
Understood, Taghreed. Let me put that to Kenneth. I mean, what's described there is a highly sophisticated means of waging war. I mean, when it comes to Israel's war on Gaza, this has been described by many as something of a kind of test case for some of the latest technology to be on show there, obviously with a huge impact on the human population in Gaza. Kenneth, after October the 7th happened, we have subsequently seen at scale in Gaza this intelligence being used to justify the killing of people after it has happened. So calls apparently made from or to buildings by person of interest, irrespective of how many civilians may be in those buildings at any moment in time. It's been described as a perversion of communications technology. Kenneth.
Well, if I could maybe just for a moment go back to a couple of things you've already mentioned. I mean, we shouldn't pretend that Israel's conduct became problematic only after the Hamas attacks of October 7th, 2023. Even before then, Israel was imposing apartheid on the West Bank, East Jerusalem, as well as Gaza. Israel has been extraordinarily repressive. So, these should have been warning signs for Microsoft and other technology companies from early on. And, for Brad Smith, Microsoft CEO, to say, we're providing cybersecurity. Well, fine. But, they're obviously providing offensive capabilities as well. You asked about, where was Israeli intelligence on October 7th? In fact, there were warnings, but the Netanyahu government was so focused on helping settlers violently depopulate parts of Area C in the West Bank that they took, the eye off the ball. And that's part of why Netanyahu is so determined to avoid a commission of inquiry. That's part of his incentive to keep pursuing his genocide so that he doesn't face the political consequences for his responsibility for, missing the Hamas attack. Now, within Gaza, what we've seen is that Israel has basically ripped up the Geneva Conventions. I mean, not only by, indiscriminately dropping 2,000-pound bombs on Palestinian neighborhoods, not only by shooting hungry Palestinians who are coming to collect food, but also, as you suggest, using intelligence to track Hamas fighters and then applying this extraordinarily, minimization of the value of Palestinian civilian lives. So according to media accounts, the Israeli lawyers are saying it's okay to kill 20 Palestinian civilians for one measly low-level Hamas fighter. Nobody thinks that that's proportionate. Everybody thinks that that's a war crime, but that's how Israel's fighting this war. And this technological analysis of, who is a Hamas fighter? Where are they? That's essential to this war crime strategy.
Rob, it's important to also stress that these allegations have been made against other big tech companies, Meta and Apple. Whistleblowers from both companies revealed alleged Israeli-led censorship on a massive scale in both companies. Rob, why might this be allowed to happen?
So in the case of something like how Meta has enforced content moderation policies, first of all, no company gets content moderation right all the time, but there seems to be a pretty clear pattern, as your reporting has uncovered. I do think it is interesting that Microsoft has at least said this is a line we won't cross, because I'm looking here at a quote I took from a speech Brad Smith gave 7 years ago at Web Summit. The tools that we've created, the tools oftentimes that you've created, have been turned by others into weapons. He said that's not a good thing for us to be doing. We should have a new Geneva Convention. So I am happy that they have taken that step. This may get them into trouble with the White House, which seems to have decided that standing with Israel means standing with Netanyahu, whatever he does.
Putting that back to you, Kenneth, is it possible to say that there might be a fusion between national state security and the workings of these very large tech companies, especially now during the Trump administration, Kenneth?
I mean, of course they're working together. And, if they're engaged in ordinary defensive spying, if they're working with a company that is committed to abide, or with a country that's committed to abiding by the Geneva Conventions, then fine. But, Microsoft has been on notice for basically, 2 years now, that the Netanyahu government is utterly ignoring international humanitarian law. It is pursuing a war crime strategy of killing and starving Palestinian civilians. So that should have sent a bright red warning sign that Microsoft and every technology company should avoid anything that would assist this. You don't need a new Geneva Convention for this. The existing Geneva Conventions make clear that these are basic war crimes, and every company has a duty to avoid complicity in those war crimes. So, when Brad Smith says, we need new standards, no, he doesn't. The standards are there. They just have to abide by those standards.
Okay. Kenneth, following that vein then, is it a stretch of the imagination to see tech firms as military contractors?
Well, they are military contractors. I mean, obviously they are. There's much of what they do which is civilian, but when the intelligence services or military forces around the world, need cloud computing, they need help with AI. These tech companies have capacities that no government has. Of course, they're subcontractors, and that imposes the duty on every company to avoid complicity in human rights violations. This is true if you're using, forced labor or child labor, or, illegal mining, the kinds of things we're used to thinking about when it comes to corporate social responsibility. But it also applies to tech companies. How is their technology being used? And it's not enough to say, we didn't know anything until the media reports. They have a duty to conduct due diligence, to be scrutinizing their clients and not to sell technology that can be used for these kind of abusive purposes to a government that is known for using them that way.
Right. You mentioned due diligence, an important phrase to use, because, Rob, Microsoft has conducted an internal review. They've concluded, in abundance of caution, to end its Azure contract with the Israeli military, years, of course, after it started, as Kenneth clearly stated there, and after, of course, the killing of 60,000 people in Gaza. So it's essentially been left to mark its own homework by the looks of it. I mean, should we be satisfied, Rob, that this is the end of it now? I mean, surely Israel can just turn to another tech giant, surely?
Oh, I'm sure of that. Like I mentioned, Oracle, they seem to be getting along quite well with the Trump administration, and they have their own cloud business, their own AI business. I would not be surprised remotely to see if somebody in business development there has placed to call to somebody in Jerusalem or Tel Aviv.
Taghreed, there's been, as we know, a huge amount of anger from within Microsoft, from within other tech giants as well, allegations of being complicit in genocide, angry protests by employees, several high-profile firings. There have been protests where you are in the Netherlands, where at a particular data center, I understand, where 11,500 terabytes of Palestinian information is stored. Do you think these revelations regarding Microsoft will empower people to make a stand? Or are these companies such a part of our everyday lives that they are in some way immune to criticism, some way immune to the boycott movement, for instance? That's to Taghreed.
Yeah, I would say, the step, that's taken, by Microsoft, we can say it's too little, too late, but it's still a step forward. And thanks to these activists, thanks to even like a movement like BDS, and I think those activists, with that step, they are empowered and they feel they have done something like tangible. And now they are calling for escalating pressure on all tech targets, not only Microsoft, but also Amazon, Google, and the others. So it is a step forward for the sake of now. And I think activists worldwide who are against the genocide, they are being empowered by such a step. And it seems they're going to be moving forward because they feel they have succeeded with this step.
Kenneth, let me put that to you as we reach the end of our programme. Are these big companies just too big for public opinion to really matter?
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, corporations I have found are very sensitive to being shown to have been complicit in human rights violations. And, part of it is they could face consumer boycotts, they could face shareholder resolutions. But what they're really worried about is their employees. And we all know that tech talent is highly coveted. It's hugely competitive. And if you're a tech genius and you're trying to figure out, should I go to a company that's complicit in genocide or one that has stayed away, guess where you're going to go? And so, I have to give Microsoft credit. They at least, belatedly have done the right thing. If other companies step in and fill the breach, that's like a huge red flag to people who care about, basic decency, not to go there, but to go to companies that purport to uphold human rights in their corporate relations with clients around the world.
Okay, well, it's been an absolutely fascinating, if not very disconcerting discussion with all three of you. One I think that all of us should be cognizant of, considering how much this technology is part of the fabric of all of our lives. Rob Pegoraro, Taghreed El-Khodary and Kenneth Roth, a pleasure to have you, all three of you, on Inside Story. And thank you too for watching. You can see the programme again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And you can also join the conversation on X. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Neave Barker, and the entire team here in Doha, bye for now.
Don't miss out, get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.